Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about getting more from our FSX for Amazon NetApp ONTAP with NetApp Workload Factory. My name is Danny Tsidoni. I'm going to host today's webinar, and I am joined today by Iska and Edward. Iska, Edward, would you like to say a word about yourselves and introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Hi to everyone. I'm Iska. I'm a product solution architect here at NetApp, working with our customers on FSX for ONTAP and Workload Factory, and very excited to be here.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Pleasure for me to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Edward Beloy. I'm part of the customer success engineering team here at NetApp, focused towards post-sales activities and helping customers just like yourself with migrations and getting value from our AWS solutions.
Well, thank you for the introductions, and let's get on with it. I think after we've introduced ourselves, let's introduce our star of the webinar, and that's, of course, Amazon FSX for NetApp ONTAP. So, what is it? It is an intelligent storage service on AWS intended for AWS workloads. What is it exactly? You can think of it as a comprehensive set of features for resilience, accessibility, balancing cost and performance. Essentially, when you think about it, first of all, it is an AWS service, part of the storage service family within the FSX realm. So why is this a NetApp webinar? Very simple, because under the bonnet, you have NetApp ONTAP technology that comes with all the comprehensive features from accessibility, serving many different kinds of protocols, from resilience and protection features, from high availability deployments, local and remote backups, disaster recovery readiness, etc. Of course, data security aspects, protecting us from malicious intents or from dereliction on our side, keeping our data secured, the ability to balance between price and performance, and of course, keeping our data mobile, having the ability to create copies, remote cache, and data migration. So that's what FSX for ONTAP is. But today, after introducing ourselves and the star, we want to get to know a little bit about you, and the best way for that is with a poll. How familiar are you with the AWS well-architected framework? Iska, what do you think our audience level of familiarity with the framework is?
I'm guessing that most of our audience have at least heard about it, if not more familiar, but I have a feeling that you'll tell us a bit about it, even if they haven't.
What do you think, Edward?
I do believe that they might be familiar with it. However, sometimes it's different. It's difficult to set or to divide your storage infrastructure or AWS footprint into one of them and how to accurately, deploy them. So yeah, let's just see what the results are.
Yes, and Liat is paging me that the results are in. So as you have guessed, great majority of our listeners have at least heard about it. Even many, 30% are well versed in it. And we do have a small minority, 20%, who are not familiar with it. So for the benefit of those who heard about it and those who are not familiar, let's have a quick refresher on what is the well-architected framework. So the well-architected framework, it is an AWS framework, and the idea is to sort of codify a set of best practices on how to create applications on AWS in the best secure, performant way with operational excellence, reliability, etc. The idea is no matter what you do, as long as you do it in AWS, you've got general guidelines on how to do it. So you can really take it, put it in a frame over your desk, and work accordingly. So it is consistent of 6 major pillars, and that's performance efficiency, cost optimization, sustainability, operational excellence, security, and reliability. The idea is to design our applications with these pillars in mind. Next slide, please. So what does it mean when we're deploying our workloads in AWS? So essentially, we can choose and configure the resources that deliver optimal cost and performance, where we balance the performance that we need for our applications. On the other hand, stay on the budget. So we can put performance efficiency, cost optimization, and of course, sustainability in that category. And on the other hand, once we have our resources aligned, we need to make sure that everything is kept available, protected, our data is secure and available on the other hand. And that is obviously we don't want to, on the one hand, maintenance is very important, but on the other hand, we want to make it as automatic as possible and limit manual work as much as possible. And here we can put operational excellence, security and reliability, and ideally we want to make these automated as possible. How is it implemented? So we've got we can choose and configure our different building blocks for what AWS has to offer, and they do offer quite extensively. And once we have everything set up, we can set workflows and processes that will orchestrate everything. So we have our well-architected building blocks, the basics that are built by AWS, and on the back end we can trust AWS to be well-architected. And on the other hand, we need to design our workflows and processes to use these these building blocks correctly and orchestrate all the moving parts in our deliveries so that the overall solution will be well-architected according to the 6 pillars. Next slide, please. So if we take the example here, so we've got FSx for ONTAP. We've mentioned it's an AWS managed storage service. Essentially, it gives you a managed version of ONTAP with all the best practices on the infrastructure side ready for us out of the box. But it comes as part of a delivery, part of a greater solution usually. And here comes a little. Here's where we need planning tools, deployment tools, and operation tools to keep our delivery in FSx for ONTAP as part of it. Wait, what have we got here? Okay.
Minor technical difficulties.
Okay, that should be better now. All right, back to it then.
For next time, we should prepare just the "We'll be back" music with like the color bar screens and so on.
So I will put the sound effects on the board here. All right, so we were talking about the gap that we have with planning tools, deployment tools, and operation tools. And here I like to talk about NetApp Workload Factory, which is a well-architected orchestration service from NetApp that delivers just that. Planning tools, deployment tools, operational tools, and many more things that we're going to see during today's webinar that will help us with our well-architected orchestration.
So Danny, for the benefit of our audience, which I assume most of them are well-versed in FSx for ONTAP and are aware of their capabilities, but may not have tried out Workload Factory yet. Why should our audience try it out? How easy is it to try it out? Why should they trust it? Because I know some people are sometimes hesitant to try out new tools and new platforms.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you're bringing up here. So essentially with Workload Factory, as I said, it comes with planning tools, deployment tools, and operational tools. And the idea is to have a gradual way to gradually get used to the tool and sort of gain confidence from the first step. So to start using Workload Factory, all you need is to have an email address. You sign up, and that's all you need to do at first. You can start using the planning tools already. You don't need to put any AWS credentials at first. But as you progress, you can start by giving Workload Factory read-only credentials, and then you can start comparing to your current delivery and gain insight about the delivery and about the resources and the data state you currently have on AWS. And as you progress and you want to deploy and operate from Workload Factory, you can give more credentials, of course. You don't need to give any more permissions than absolutely necessary. So with that, I think you can definitely be sure that on the one hand, Workload Factory can help you operate, but on the other hand, it is a secure tool. Do you know what yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to interrupt you for another time just to point out to our audience that if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you're very welcome to post them in our Q&A section here, and we're happy to answer it during the webinar, and also at the end, we'll have a section where we answer some questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Iska. I did neglect to do that in the housekeeping part, so thank you for that. We do have chat responders that are in there, so don't write in the chat, but in the Q&A forum, and we can give you an answer. If you don't, and for some reason you don't have time to do it during the presentation, we'll also have a dedicated section for Q&A at the end of the presentation, but feel free to do it while we're talking. And let's remind me, Iska, that I didn't tell you what's my favorite thing about Workload Factory.
Should I guess?
Yes.
I'm guessing the TCO calculators.
Almost. You're close.
Okay.
The price, it's absolutely free.
Nice.
And doesn't cost you any money, no matter how much you use it and with what you use. It's free of charge, so feel free to try and do it today. No PO is needed. No, don't need to bug the CFO. You can just start using and gain value from it from day one. And with that, next slide, please. Okay, so I think it's time to see it in action. Through this webinar, we're going to a global company that wants to create a shared file repository on AWS. They already have an on-premise data center with on-premise file servers, and they want to expand to AWS. And the first step is to create a company-wide shared data set and to see how they can use Workload Factory to plan and deploy and operate it. We're going to do that, but before that, a poll. When you're working with FSx for ONTAP, what are your top priorities when working on AWS? Is it cost efficiency, high performance, high availability, or data protection? What are your guesses, Edward, Iska? What are we going to hear today?
I would say in the current landscape, well, I'm guessing it's going to be a mix between maybe data protection, security, and cost efficiency. What do you think, Iska?
I think I definitely agree. I mean, performance and high availability are always important things, but I feel like coming from a security background myself, that it's always going to be one of the top, and cost, we always want to keep our cost in the budget.
So I come from one of my previous roles where my job was FinOps engineers, i.e. getting on the AWS account and see where you can essentially optimize the account, get more, but spend less. So I think cost efficiency is going to be a major concern here. And let's see the results. And indeed, I am glad to say I can boast and gloat that I was right. 42%, the biggest concern is cost efficiency. Far second is data protection and security, and tying with high availability, 23% each. And to today's audience, apparently high performance is not what's the top priority, only 12%. But high performance could also be served by FSx for ONTAP in specific use cases. But with that, let's go on to how we plan our FSx for ONTAP, whether it's for cost performance or high availability or high performance. And with that, I am leaving you with the very capable hands of Edward. Edward, please show us how we can plan our infrastructure.
Thank you, Danny, and that was a great rundown of the AWS framework. So, as we've established before, Workload Factory is a tool that can help us into the three main pillars, which is planning, provisioning, and operation of our FSxN footprint. We are going to focus on a use case of one fictitious customer that has a set of requirements on the planning phase. Those requirements are the following. Whenever we move our footprint into our AWS account, we need to maintain the same level of performance and resilience as in our ONTAP on-premises systems. Of course, as we have seen in our poll, cost is a really important factor. So our storage costs for the FSx for NetApp ONTAP platform must be competitive. And in the best case scenario, it must be lower than other AWS storage portfolio alternatives that our customers, just like yourselves, might be interested in. And the planning time needs to be minimal, meaning time to value is important. We do not want to get stuck in an endless migration with several blockers that just drag on the migration forever. We need to be quick, we need to be efficient. And that's where, well, you can leverage us as your trusty companions, Iska, Danny, and myself. However, Workload Factory can be a great tool for us to deploy and help that migration. Up next, we're going to have a quick demo for our planning phase. So throughout the planning phase, the first step is choosing the right tool. And as we've seen, cost is a really important factor. Inside Workload Factory, as you can see on the left pane, we have our Explore Savings panel. This section of the tool basically allows us to compare the price of our FSx for NetApp ONTAP solution with other AWS storage services portfolio, just like Elastic Block Storage, Elastic File System, and FSx for Windows File Server, which is the one that we are going to focus on today. This is basically just us leveraging the AWS Cost Calculator APIs. It's not something that we've developed. It's something that we've developed, but it's not something that we've made up. We're just basically getting the calculations from AWS Calculator and comparing them live into the tool. If we select our solution that we want to compare it with and click on Explore Savings, we must select our use case, which for the customer that we're trying to help, it's departmental file shares. Now, once we select the use case and the region, we can select the deployment type that we need, which is either single availability zone or multi-availability zone. For some of our customers, we've seen before that HA is really important as well. That's where FSx for ONTAP has HA embedded. If we want to put it into different multiple availability zones, we can choose that option. Scrolling down, we can see the other configurable parameters that we have in our tool, such as storage capacity or the duplication savings, basically what we expect the tool to function as, snapshot frequency, and of course, our performance characteristics in IOPS and throughput. Once we select all of these characteristics, on the right side, we can see a cost comparison with a similar sized tool of, in this case, FSx for Windows File Server. You might be asking yourself, okay, I'm a bit confused on what maybe the dedupe savings are, or what's the snapshot frequency, and so on. If we scroll down, we can have a detailed explanation of all the characteristics that we're able to configure into Workload Factory. Once we've seen that, we can save our configuration or view the calculation in a more detailed manner. Now, here is where we're going to have a breakdown, a real breakdown of the cost. Where basically, where is my money going towards? Is it going towards throughput? Is it going towards snapshot, etc., etc.? This section is quite useful for the deal desk. For example, if you want to present it to them, it's like, hey, this is where we're getting the value out of, or just for educational purposes. This is kind of the summary that the Explore Savings part of Workload Factory can help us with selecting and the planning phase of our operation. If we move on to our next slide.
Wait. I have a question there. So it's, in our business, hindsight is 2020, as you know, and in many cases, you build your solution, and then as going back to cost efficiency, you get an angry phone from your CFO, you exceeded your budget, etc. You see you're spending a lot of money. Question is, it's very nice to compare with the TCO calculator to a theoretical, but can you use the TCO calculator to compare to what you have already, to the solution that you already have?
That is a great question indeed. So as you've briefly touched on before, we have two ways of operating Workload Factory. We can just use it as a plug and play. So we just start using it. We manually input all the characteristics of the either present file system or what we need to. Or whenever we gain more trust into Workload Factory, we can actually allow it with a sufficient IAM roles and privileges to scan in read-only mode our environment and the storage solutions that are already present into our AWS account, and it will pinpoint exactly the characteristics of the file system deployed and compare it to what we have in our infrastructure. So that is not going to be a supposed case. It's going to be a real-time calculation, which is very powerful for comparing prices and optimize it further going into a migration into FSx for NetApp ONTAP. That is a great question, Danny. Thank you.
Well, thank you for a very good explanation.
So moving on to the last part of the planning phase, we have FSx for ONTAP as our champion for the well-architected building blocks and Workload Factory as the champion in the well-architected orchestration. FSx for NetApp ONTAP leverages storage efficiencies, and it is able to be configured for multiple use cases into our well-architected building block phase. And Workload Factory, it's basically going to deliver a simple, powerful, and fast planning tool, as we've seen, comparing TCOs, getting a breakdown, or where do we get our value into, and have detailed configuration explanation for all of them. Now, previously, when we were selecting our use case, we've seen there were a bunch of them. We focused on the shared file system one, the departmental file shares, but basically we can configure FSx for NetApp ONTAP for multiple use cases. And there's a wide range of it, a wide spectrum. We can go for archive, meaning we're going to have a minimal SKU file system, powerful enough to ingest data and have it for archive, and go on the opposite side of the spectrum, having it for engineering data, having it for block storage, for fast databases, and present it also as a VMware data store. So wide range of opportunities with FSx for NetApp ONTAP. Moving on. Second phase, second pillar that Workload Factory will help us with is deploying the infrastructure. Once again, we have a set of requirements. In this specific use case, our source will be a NetApp ONTAP on-prem systems that we want to migrate all data into the cloud, into our AWS account. Those requirements are being able to replicate the volumes into AWS efficiently, of course, getting all of our ACLs, all of our permissions, and have it all configured into AWS. We need to enable simultaneous access from Windows and Linux workstations, meaning we need to make available SMB and CIFS file shares and as well NFS exports into our FSx for NetApp ONTAP file system. And of course, let's get value out of the data that we migrate and we put into our AWS account. Let's present it to AWS data services without deduplication, without duplicating any data, without creating a carbon copy of it. We're going to focus on a bit later on how to do that.
So Edward, before you demonstrate the next stage, I was wondering if you can share with us from your experience working with many, many customers here in NetApp, what do you find customers using FSx for NetApp ONTAP find more challenging between those two stages that we've just been through, the planning, which we know can be golden if you do it right, but really takes a lot of meticulous care, and as opposed to the provisioning part and actually getting things in action?
That's a great question as well. it's kind of hard to choose between both because they are equally important. It's kind of like asking a kid to choose between mom and dad. That is going to get confused and angry. They're both equally important. We need to have a solid planning beforehand and choose the right tool that is accurate, that is going to deliver on what is promised. And of course, we need to provision it fast and get time to value as soon as possible and have our workloads operational, lowering the migration, easing the migration. And this is where, as we can see in our next demo, Workload Factory is going to be a very close companion to do so. Thank you for that question, Iska. That was great. Moving into our next section, we're going to have a quick demonstration on the deploying and provisioning part. So once again, from the home page of Workload Factory, we will be able, with the sufficient privileges that right now we have configured, to discover our on-prem footprint. We're going to just view the cluster that we want to migrate volumes out of and choose one, if not all, of the volumes that we want replicated into FSX for NetApp ONTAP. It is just as simple as clicking replicate, choosing the right set of credentials that allows us sufficient privileges to deploy resources into AWS, the region, and the FSX for NetApp ONTAP file system that we want to make use of. Moving on, once we select that, we can see that we can select a use case for the migration, which in our case will be, just migrate the volume over a lift and shift of the volume operating inside our ONTAP, on-prem operating systems into FSX for NetApp ONTAP. As you can see, the keyword there, it's still ONTAP, right? It's still our own proprietary file system that you might be aware of. You're going to have the basically exact set of functionalities and features on both ends of the migration. Meaning we're going to use our embedded replicator, let's call it, which is called SnapMirror, to move data between our on-prem systems to our FSX for NetApp ONTAP destination. Once we select everything right here, it's just as easy as click on create. But before we do that, I want to quickly point to the right of the screen, that cool black box that we have over there. For our infrastructure as code peeps, just like myself, we do like to automate it. So Workload Factory will give us the exact API calls that are going to be launched towards our AWS infrastructure to basically provision everything underneath. It's just a cheat code that you can just copy and put it into your automation stack to make your life easier. Now, once we click create, we can just have a look at the tracker and we can see everything that Workload Factory is doing underneath for ourselves. For ONTAP Savvy peeps, we can see that it's already creating the peering between both file systems, between our on-prem and AWS. It is creating the volume and basically everything underneath that we do not need to worry about. Once everything is created, we can see our data footprint of the volumes into AWS. This is our FSX for NetApp ONTAP volumes. And going back to the third requirement, we remember that we want to make use of our data. We want to present it to AWS data services. For example, we can present it to Athena, so we can query our data. We can present it to Bedrock to make use of a chatbot of the files that we have present in our volume. We're going to do that by creating a S3 access point. Now, I want to make a quick clarification before we move on. This is not placing data into an S3 bucket and we're just pointing you to that S3 bucket. No, this is not duplicating data. This is accessing the same data, the same volume that you migrated for your ONTAP on-prem operating system into FSX for NetApp ONTAP with the same hierarchy of directories and files, we just allow it S3 access just as easy. How we do that? We just come into Workload Factory and create and attach an S3 access point. Just as easy as giving it a name, a local user inside ONTAP that has the sufficient privileges. Oh, sorry about that. That has the sufficient privileges to access the data and the user type, and we just create it and attach it just as easy. And with that, we've reached the end of our demonstration.
So Edward, that looks like a really powerful capability, that S3 access point. And I just want to clarify, or have you clarify, although you've explained it really in a very clear and excellent way, but we are not copying the data into a new S3 bucket, correct?
Correct, indeed. And this is a very, very, very differential aspect of how the tool operates. You basically just give it the Duolingo app of learning the S3 language, and it's just like that. You can access it via S3 to your already existing volume. This is one of the coolest features that has been, I want to say recently added, but we've been at it for some months now, but that is gaining real traction, and we're really, really, really happy about it.
Cool, great analogy, thanks.
Thank you. And for the last part of the provision, just a quick summary. On the well-architected building blocks, we can have multi-protocol access, just as we've demonstrated, and data mobility support. Multi-protocol, I want to quickly touch on as well. We've seen that we can enable NFS and SMB. We've seen that we can present it to S3, but as well using iSCSI to present it to our block workloads. For Workload Factory into all well-architected orchestration, we can see we have just a simple migration wizard that recommends best practices, but not only that, it actions upon those best practices and deploys our file system according to those best practices. Expanding a bit on the data mobility support. As we can see, we are able to migrate volumes from our ONTAP operating systems, leveraging SnapMirror, into FSx for NetApp ONTAP. But not only that, we're able to migrate it between different regions, different FSx for NetApp operating system that might be on different AWS regions, as I've said. We're able to mirror it using SnapMirror. We're able to clone that data, for example, for block storage and databases. We're able to clone the database in seconds and restore it in minutes, which is a really powerful phrase that I like to use. And of course, offer data into edge locations for users to be able to access it locally, even though the central repository is far away. With that, I would like to put a ribbon on the provisioning side and just have a quick poll.
All right, so in our third poll, we would like to know, how do you know if your infrastructure is not optimized? Are the monthly costs unexpectedly high? Are users reporting issues? You're not sure if it's optimized or not? Or the answer I hope you're going to answer, my infrastructure is continuously monitored. So ideally, everybody answers the last answer, but knowing that the world is not ideal, I'm sure we'll have some people answering that they're unsure if their infrastructure is optimized, but I definitely hope that your users are not reporting issues and you don't have any problems with your costs. But we've all been there, that being surprised by the DBR, by the detailed billing report.
I mean, being realistic, it is hard to continuously monitor your environment and be on top of everything. We know that's a big challenge for a lot of our customers. I wonder how they're doing.
Let's see, yeah. So I'm glad to report that 40% have their infrastructure continuously monitored.
Very impressive.
27 are not sure if the infrastructure is optimized. We do have users who are reporting issues. Oh dear, oh dear. And fortunately, a minority of the audience. And 23% monthly cost are unexpectedly high, which unfortunately is a very common phenomenon, very common occurrence.
And correlates with cost being a top priority.
Exactly. So with that, I think now that we have, now that Edward has planned and provisioned our FSX for ONTAP, we need to understand how do we operate it on the day 2 and forward. And for that, Iska, if you could please go with us on how one needs to operate the FSX for ONTAP data estate.
Absolutely. Thanks, Danny. So yeah, Edward took us through the planning and provisioning part. We have planned meticulously, the very correct configurations so that we are optimized both on cost, performance, on across all of those pillars of the well-architected framework. We've gone through the provisioning part. We've put everything in place. Everything is up and running. And it's day 2 now. And our environment is dynamic and it's changing, and our data is getting written and our users are using our applications. And in some cases, our volumes may be getting filled up and nearing their capacity. In some other cases, data might be getting cold because it hasn't been accessed in a while and can be tiered off to optimize the cost and performance. And these are basically the requirements we want to put in place for our operational stage. We want to keep checking if our deployment is still aligned with best practices in this dynamic atmosphere. We want to detect any misconfigurations we're having, any new misconfigurations or drifts that we're having from our initial configurations, whether in new file systems or new volumes that we're creating or in our existing ones. And we want to fix these as easily as possible. There's nothing more annoying than getting an error and alert and not knowing what to do about it. We want to take that next step and quickly and easily fix it. So we'll see now a demonstration of Workload Factory, and we're looking now at the well-architected dashboard in Workload Factory. We're looking at the main view of our entire file system. If we drill down into one of our file systems, we can see how we're doing there. We see the overall score. We see how we're doing in each of these pillars. And basically, this well-architected dashboard is an implementation of the well-architected framework we were talking about, designed and guided to us by AWS, and includes some additional configuration checks written by NetApp experts who were part of this, of designing and implementing this powerful tool of Workload Factory. So if we carry on, we'll see how we can dive into one of our file systems. We see our overall score is 71 at this point. We're doing pretty well on cost. We have room for improvement on reliability and operational excellence. And if we go into one of these checks, we can see we're looking into automatic capacity management. If we stop here for a second, basically, we all know the feeling, or I hope you don't, but realistically, we all know the feeling of getting that midnight call from guard duty or getting that annoyed message that production is down from your manager, or worse, your users, your customers. And we want to avoid that. And if we can have a system doing things automatically for us behind the scenes, that is always ideal for us. So this is what this recommendation is talking about, allowing the system to automatically increase your capacity using configurations that, of course, you have full control over. So here you mark the threshold of 80%. When you reach 80%, you would like it to increase by a 10%. That way you can sleep quietly. And of course, you can design this for particular volumes for which you want this applied. It may not suit you in all cases. If we carry on from here, we'll see some other examples. Obviously, as Edward showed before, all processes done by Workload Factory we can follow by our tracker and see that it worked successfully and that it's running in the background, and you can be calm about that. If we go back to our file system that we were looking at, we can see if our overall score has changed. Again, we're continuously monitoring our environment, so we want to see that we improve. We always want to see also what we're doing well in. So we're looking here, we see it has raised from 71% to 86%. That's already great. And if we continue and scroll down from here, we'll see all configurations for which we're checking, both those that we have recommendations for because they are not optimized, and also those that we are optimized because, again, we like a nice pat on the back and we like to know what we're doing well. We'll drill down into the remote data replication now. We'll see those volumes for which we do not yet have replication and which we can enhance our protection for by creating one. If we carry on from here, we can either choose a bulk action or just for one volume and easily fix it from here by clicking the continue button. We reach a similar wizard for which we saw like Edward showed us in the provisioning part, and we can carry on from here doing a similar replication like we did in the migration use case. We choose the file system, etc., and we can either let the system do this automatically from here and create it using the permissions that you have allowed Workload Factory to do, right? We're not doing anything unless you grant us, you opt in and grant us these permissions to take these.
Sorry, we might have a quick issue with our microphone there.
Okay.
And we are back.
Okay, try to talk now.
Yeah, I'm here. We're back. So as we were saying, we can either do this automatically through Workload Factory itself, or we can copy paste this exact command, and it will already include all the configurations that we put in place. All the configurations that were put in place automatically include according to the use case that we've chosen. We can use this in any automation that we want to use, or even send it if perhaps in your company a different team is in charge of running these commands or putting these things in place. You can just copy paste it to the correct people in your organization and save you time on this ping pong, on back and forth, on how would you like, what would you like, getting authorization, etc. So this is in the area of the well-architected. And another useful and handy tool I'd like to show you is, like all all useful tools nowadays, we have an AI agent built in to the platform. It's called the Ask Me Assistant. It's right there in the first page as you enter Workload Factory, and you can ask any question that comes to mind regarding your environment, regarding best practices. For example, this first example is, are any of my volumes not protected from ransomware? This could be something that interests you, or it could be a question coming from somebody. There may have been some sort of ransomware attack on a big company, and your manager is now asking, wait, stop everything. How well are we doing on ransomware? Are we protected? What's our status? You can just click that in here, write it down, and get a comprehensive answer of how you're doing. Now, if we haven't mentioned this before, in Workload Factory, you have the ability, let's stop here for a second, you have the ability to connect multiple AWS accounts, multiple regions. So that's saving you time on toggling between these different views and different screens. You get a consolidated view across your entire environment for which you are connected. So we're seeing now an answer of how well we are protected against ransomware across our entire environment. So you see how well you are currently doing and what steps you can take to further enhance your environment. Just a really nice, human spoken words that everyone can understand. If we carry on from here, we'll see some other example. Just another thing to mention is this AI agent is connected both to, it's running on documentation of Workload Factory and NetApp, and is aware of all the best practices, the recent best practices, and it's also connected to your environment. Again, using those permissions that you've already granted to the system. So it's based on real data, right? It's based on your environment. We're seeing now how if our volumes are nearing its capacity, and again, across all of your volumes and those that are close, what actions you should take to improve your situation. Just a really nice handy tool. Another use for it, here's another example, is my file system using its CPU too heavily. And you can also, just another useful use for this is to drop in any maybe uncomprehensive error message that you get and sort of cut down some time on waiting for support, for example. It's just another sort of use case that we see our customers using. So carrying on from here, we saw how Workload Factory is helping us on this day two operations. We know that managing your environment on an ongoing basis can be time consuming, and your time is valuable. And that's what this tool is here to help you do. So we're seeing how on the operational side, FSx for ONTAP gives us those well-architected building blocks the ability to optimize performance and scale according to evolving needs, and giving us those data protection capabilities where Workload Factory is the orchestrational tool that we can use to save us time by automatically detecting drifts and, monitoring our environment on an ongoing basis, and give us those quick fix buttons that we love, actionable remediations that we can use immediately. And just enhance, talking more about those data protection capabilities, we're talking about the ability to restore our data as quickly as possible because we know we have backups in place either by local snapshots or in a remote location. So we've gone through the entire life cycle of a workload using this fictional example, but we know that it's based on real examples that we see our customers using, right? Migrating from on-premise to the cloud, whether it's the first time you're starting out with the cloud or whether you want to replicate another volume and just enhance your protection. And knowing that, adhering to all these best practices can be a bit overwhelming, whether you don't know, whether you are new to AWS, and even if you have many, many years of experience, it can be time consuming. So we saw today how through the planning stage, we have FSx for ONTAP giving us those storage efficiencies and allowing us to migrate our data with a variety of different use cases, and how Workload Factory is supporting that by giving us TCO calculator and those migration advisors. And if you haven't yet seen, we've posted in the chat, you should have in the chat by now, a link to Workload Factory where you can get started and try it out yourself. And as we've mentioned, for this stage, for the planning stage, it's A, free of cost throughout the entire time that you use Workload Factory, but B, you don't even have to give it any credentials for this stage. You can just start by trying out the TCO calculator, for example, which what we like about it is it's honest. It'll give you a real picture whether FSx for ONTAP is the right solution for you. And it takes us through to the provisioning stage as well. We saw FSx for ONTAP allowing us multi-protocol access into our volumes and high availability, supporting those mission-critical applications. And Workload Factory gives us the ability to do that quickly, do it easily, use those best practices according to your use case by using the deployment wizards and either running it automatically or using the infrastructure as code of choice. Onto the operational side, where FSx for ONTAP gives us those capabilities to always protect our data against disaster or against malware activity, malicious activity. We know that we can be safe if we use it correctly, and the way we make sure that we use it correctly is we can use Workload Factory to help us automate those things, to give us visibility into how well we're doing, use those comprehensive dashboards, and continuously optimize our environment by using those recommendations. So that brings us close to the end of our webinar today. I think that takes us...
Yes, indeed. And we hit the Q&A, and I must say, I'll congratulate the audience here that I've been working very hard during the presentation when Iska and Edward were talking, answering many, many questions, many insightful and interesting questions. So well done for that. If you have any, if you still didn't get a chance to answer, to ask your questions, please feel free to do it now. In the meantime, I'll choose a question or two. Yes, there's one. If somebody, his name is Ibrahim, who asked, if I would like to set up archiving destination in the cloud, what is the requirement? Can I use Workload Factory and know the cost provisioning? So,
great question.
Great question. So yeah, archiving, you can choose a very specific configuration to archiving, which has the tiering option to tier code data to S3. So you pay less for storage. With Workload Factory, you can use the TCO calculator to basically put the use case, get it ready. If you want, another part of the question was the replication part, from replicating the archive data to the cloud. So you need to set up the connection, typically with a VPN tunnel. Some customers, with other reason, would use Direct Connect for archiving. I wouldn't use that. I think it's overkill. But the AWS documentation have a lot of thorough documentation on how you set up a VPN between your on-premise data center to your cloud account. And you can definitely use that and Workload Factory both to facilitate the migration if it's from an ONTAP system, and of course get an accurate estimate of the monthly cost of the FSX for ONTAP. And another important point here, that if you're transferring data from your on-prem to the cloud, it's ingress cost. So AWS don't charge for that. What other interesting questions did I have here? We had questions about the S3 access point. Maybe, Edward, you'd like to talk about it. If I set an S3 access point, is it read-only or is it read-write?
S3 access point can operate bidirectionally, read only and read write. Basically, you're gonna have access just as if you were accessing an S3 bucket, only it's not an S3 bucket, it's the volume that you're already operating on.
Okay, I see we have some fresh questions that I didn't have an answer. George is asking, is there a new version in the pipeline? And if yes, what new features can we expect? So I know, first of all, that there's Gen 3 in the works, I think. There's Gen 2. There are currently two generations of FSX for ONTAP. Gen 2 has some nifty features like scale out, if you're into that.
I wonder if the question was relating to FSX for ONTAP or to Workload Factory, because Workload Factory has ongoing new versions coming out and new features and capabilities every month, basically. So many of which we haven't showed today. Today was mainly how we start out.
Yeah. So George says Workload Factory.
Okay.
Very good. Good correction there.
So good question. So yeah, there are many more capabilities above from what we've shown today. You'll see here in the next page, there's a link to resources where you can watch a few more videos of additional capabilities and new features coming out. Definitely a lot to look forward to.
There's an interesting question here. Where can we see the performance of volume in S3, just like AIQ? Yeah, you want to take that, Edward?
Yeah, sure. So ICOM, as we know, was a really powerful tool for monitoring our ONTAP on-premises footprint. We have several monitoring tools available for FSX for NetApp ONTAP. So we have the embedded CloudWatch metrics that in your AWS console, you're able to get performance metrics on. We have some really cool NetApp developed dashboards that complement the ones available natively into AWS that you can deploy as well. If you are used to your Grafana monitoring of performance, we have that option as well in our trusty GitHub of NetApp. So we have a vast array of actually checking and monitoring performance of our volumes. Easiest one that's embedded natively is just CloudWatch monitoring embedded into your FSxN deployment.
Okay, and last bit of a sensitive question here, but I'll read it anyway. Can we extend to Azure Blob? If you want to work in Azure, NetApp has solutions in Azure. This is a more AWS-centric webinar, and I know there's Azure NetApp Files and there's CVO in Azure. Once again, not my area of expertise, so I don't want to confuse you. But you can definitely check those out if you want to work in Azure and with Azure Blob. Let's see if we have one last final question to conclude with. This one I need an answer. I don't know the answer myself. There was a question whether Workload Factory, and also once we've migrated, can it put the NFS export and CIFS share? And the answer is yes. You can use Workload Factory UI to set up your Active Directory on FSX for ONTAP, set the CIFS shares. That option currently doesn't exist in the AWS console. So that Workload Factory can be a major help because you have a very easy to use UI if you want to set CIFS shares on your FSX for ONTAP. I would definitely, if you want to do use FSX for ONTAP with CIFS, I would definitely recommend Workload Factory for that.
Just want to another quick sort of mention to George's question before about Workload Factory. Today we covered just the tip of the iceberg of what Workload Factory can do, just starting out with it. And you have here in the chat both a link to try it out yourself and a link to get a personal demo if you'd like to set up with one of our experts. We have many other capabilities around databases, VMware, EDA workloads, and now analyzing your logs and EMS events. So there's plenty more to talk about and to use on an ongoing basis. And you're very welcome to try it out yourself or schedule a demonstration.
Right. And with that, I would like to thank everybody. First of all, thank you, Edward, and thank you, Fiska, for joining the webinar. I'd like to thank, of course, our producer, Liat, who's keeping us honest and minimizing our bloopers. And last but not least, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for first of all, for taking the time of your day to join the webinar, for sending interesting questions, for answering the polls, and making this webinar a lot more engaging, interesting, and interactive. Thank you very much, and we all hope to see you in future webinars. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day.